and in 2011 first engaged with AAMEG as interim CEO during a transitional phase of the organisation. And I'll ask him to come and make his presentation to us now.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you. That was fantastic, really interesting. Nice to hear that part of the story, right? For those of you who don't know me or haven't met me, my name's Doug Horak. I'm the CEO of AAMEG. I wanted to start this presentation with a conversation that I had, and you can imagine I'm not going to get it entirely right, but it went something like this. We were at a dinner, and as normal, you start talking about what you do and how you do, and I was chatting to a gentleman, and I said, so what do you do? What do you do for work? And he said, oh, well, we develop communities. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, are you a not-for-profit? What, you know? No, we are a listed entity and we develop communities. I said, okay. I said, so how do you develop communities and what does that entail? And he said, well, in some communities we do agricultural projects. We have put in water facilities, water pumps. We have built some schools. We have created some medical infrastructure. We have some medical care in some of the regions. More recently, in one of the areas that we're in, we donated a large amount of specific maize seed, which will help with yields for the local communities, taking it from subsistence farming to eventually producing crops that can be sold, etc. And I was like, okay, that sounds really interesting. And you're not an NGO. You said you're a listed entity. Who pays for this? You know, how does this work? I said, no, well, the shareholders pay for it. And I'm like, okay, but there's got to be some return, right? Because this is not a charity organization. It's not a not-for-profit. So how do they get a return on the investment? And he said, no, well, we use mining as a tool, right? So we go into these regions, we get investment, we deliver a huge amount of community benefits. We put a lot of time and effort into what it is we're doing. We build a mine. We utilize the revenue we generate from that to pay back our investors, and that's what we do. And he then said to me, so what is it that you do? And I then said, well, our group is called the Australia, Africa and Minerals and Energy Group. And we help companies like yourselves in Africa. So we try and support mining companies. We try and support mining service companies. And it's all about how we assist them in that investment process. And I need to be clear on when I talk about the investment process. We are not an investment bank. We don't do direct investment. We're a membership-based organization. Certainly, we'd be able to connect you into some of the potential investors. And we tend to look at how, by leveraging our membership base, by leveraging our experts, and some of them are here in the audience, how we can improve or how we can make more efficient that investment journey or that journey of understanding of what a region looks like. I wanted to give you a short idea around what that might look like for someone. So a mining company not too long ago approached us and said, Doug, we've been operating in Namibia for a number of years now. We know what we're doing there. We're very comfortable with what's going on in the region. We understand it. We know the people. But we've been offered an opportunity in a West African destination. And we've never been to West Africa. We don't know where to start. We don't know who to talk to. And within a relatively short period of time, the organization was able to link him in to probably 8 people across the spectrum of service providers and some mining companies. So a couple of them were CEO and MD types that had led mining companies and oil and gas companies in this particular region, to consultants that had been operating on the ground for between 10 and 15 years, one of which was a specialist in community development. A third company who was involved and has been involved in the logistics world for many years and has been operating in that destination for many years. So by the time he got on the airplane to actually get out to this particular country, he already had a much broader understanding of what he would find on the ground. They spent about 2 weeks in country, had a really good time, came back and said, it's fantastic, the asset is really good, we're very happy with where things are. The meetings on the ground went very well, both at regional level, community level, and they did manage to get in to see the minister as well. And he then had a second set of questions for me around, okay, so now I'd like to understand more about this particular security issue in this region and this particular area around this. And so the next conversation was then introducing him and connecting him into another group of experts that could give him much more specific, detailed information on some of the areas he now needed. And as a result, I think before the end of this year, they will sign a deal and that company will get going and we will start seeing investment flow in. We'll start seeing community development take place. We'll start seeing this project, if it's as good as he says it is, and these are Geo, so he's optimistic, hopefully evolve into something more long-term and more sustainable. So that is some of how and what we do in the easiest or common or simplest terms that I can put it across to you. We have a board of directors. It's a voluntary board, some of who you will know. Peter DeLeo is our chairman. Mark Norwell from Parenti sits on our board. Muriel Stegman from DLA Pipe is on our board. Mark Sommier from Aura Energy. Philip Lagat, Joe Taboni. Sharif Anwar, you know, from BDO. So we have a very competent group of people at board level who help guide the organization, look at strategy with us, how we deliver what it is we need to deliver. And they're fantastic in terms of supporting us. We tend to focus on where we can make a difference, and we have to be relatively conscious about what we're trying to do. And when I say that, it's not avoiding countries where we don't have people or we don't have footprint or we don't have Australian companies operating, but we can add a lot more value in regions where we have a broad-based footprint, where we can pull those people in a room together, connect them, pull the right experts in, and actually, hopefully in time, develop that region more by having this broader base approach. And so looking forward, these regions will also shift. And that's also the beautiful nature about Africa and the opportunity there. We see probably around 15 resource destinations, if you want to simplify it in those terms, but a further 15 to 20 really good long-term opportunities. And we try where we can to leverage a bit of looking into the future and what we see as coming down the pipeline in terms of where those opportunities are going. And we do that by interacting with some of the governments, some of the investment boards, some of the ministries where we can. And then in the same sense, also talk to our own governments, so our state government, and where we can and when we get the opportunity, also interacting with Canberra through the Department of Foreign Affairs. We have an extremely active heads of mission from an Australia perspective across the continent. They are very thinly spread, but they are constantly servicing, looking after our Australian companies that operate on the ground. It's not the easiest thing to do, particularly when you have very limited resources. There's a security conference that happens at the end of this month and the first day of October, and that's WAMS, which is a West African Mining Security Conference. I think it's going into its 5th year or 6th year now. And that is something that is strategically important, not only at government level, but at a broader level for that West Africa region, and particularly in the mining space, as to how security issues can impact mining companies and what that looks like. It's a 2-day conference, and there's some really good practical advice around crisis management, responding to those incidents, how you manage those. And it's through those sorts of organizations and those sorts of events where we can leverage some of the strategic objectives at a federal level and keep federal government interested in what we're doing in Africa. The other thing I'd like to mention, and it sits in the same sort of strategic vein, is when you look at Australia as what are their great exports, mining is right at the top of the list. One of the others that is very close to that is education. And one of the big opportunities going forward across the continent is capacity building, training, education. And from a mining sector specific view, we have an incredible level of expertise, an incredible depth of knowledge, and have that ability to share that across the continent in a number of these mining destinations. And this is not something new. This has been done for a while. We are hoping that in the next 6 to 12 months, there will be some really exciting in-country education, training, capacity building facilities that are going to be set up with Australian mining companies and mining service companies. And the idea is then to back them up, depending on what is required from a Curtin Uni perspective, a West Australian School of Mines perspective, WAXI perspective in West Africa, and looking at what else can be done in the education space. We are fortunate that we have this depth and breadth of knowledge and what we can do with it to utilize those expertise, but also deliver that on country and in country. It's been and will continue to be one of the biggest challenges, and the numbers have been bandied about throughout this conference around the youth population that is fast approaching in terms of its growth and what that looks like from 2030 onwards. It is going to be one of the most important regions globally for the next 20 years, without a shadow of a doubt. We are seeing more attention being paid to Africa now at a geopolitical level than ever before. We are seeing numerous, new actors is not quite the right term because some of them have been there a long time, but there's been a renewed interest. So from the Middle East perspective, in terms of the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis, the Turks are playing a much larger role. We're seeing revenue finally flowing out of the US into the African nations. We're starting to see the UK and Europe starting to make good on a number of conversations they've been having over the years around critical minerals, and that's starting to turn into actual checks being written. So from an Africa perspective and growth perspective, the next 5-10 years are absolutely critical, I believe, from an Australia opportunity perspective. We have an incredible met sector. I'm not sure we're leveraging that enough. We have incredible mining skills. I think we're doing as much as we can now, but I think that will grow in time as well. I was asked by one of the visiting governments, what can we do as a African government to get more engagement from Australia? And we sort of ran through the normal, security of tenure, long-term views on things, a legislative system that is supportive, a tax system that is fair. And none of those are new or different. But one of the other things I said to them was, what I really think you should be doing if you're serious about engaging from a West Australian perspective and in the mining sector perspective, is you need to have an office in Perth. You need to have someone here on the ground in Western Australia so we can directly engage daily, weekly, monthly, throughout the year. We have a lot of high commissioners that sit in Canberra, and I think there's a function for that. But I think the trade part of that function should be Western Australia. This is the capital of Africa and Australia. Canberra have a lot on their plate. Africa's not one of those things. They do what they can with what they have, and that's absolutely understandable. But I think to get real engagement and real investment and real partnerships and a lot of the joint ventures that keep being spoken about at certainly mining services level and METS level, we need to get more active and have a way of attracting African governments to set up trade offices here. So that's something we can potentially keep talking about a while. I wanted to then quickly reflect on some of the other areas that tend not to be spoken about enough. Last night we had the AAMEG Awards. Some of you were able to attend, and thank you for supporting it. One of the biggest parts of AAMEG, aside from connecting people, providing the insights, is advocating. And advocating we do continually. And when I say that, we tell stories. And we continue to tell stories. And if you're in the room last night, you would have heard some incredible stories. And hopefully we will have more of those in time. And hopefully we will keep or finding a way to make sure that those stories are coming to the fore more often, and that is being spoken about more often. There are there's sometimes a bit of a disconnect in terms of understanding. Another conversation was, I was remarking to someone at a mining club lunch I was at, that I had just seen that Perseus was in the final stages of completing a 21-kilometer road, I think, that they were working with the government on. I think they paid about 70% of the costs, government paid the rest, or at least a share of it, and I think there might have been someone else. I might have that slightly wrong, but it was for a 20-odd kilometer piece of road. They were sealing it, redoing bridges, redoing drainage, the normal civil sorts of things that we see and take for granted. And the individual looked at me as if I was crazy, that I was making a point about this road that was being built. And because I grew up in Africa and have traveled extensively, I understand the importance of a sealed road. It makes no sense to someone in Australia when I try and communicate that to them. Because unless they've been on the ground and you're traveling 20 kilometers and it's going to take you 4 hours because of the condition of the road, and you get to a bridge that no longer exists, that was there yesterday, it's not there today. These sorts of things are not quite understood. And so I think we miss an opportunity there. There's another, and I'm starting to run low on time, there's another thing I'd like to share about a company, and one of the founding directors is around, and most of you will know him. And when they started in this particular region in East Africa, they arrived at this community, early engagement, started getting to know people, found someone that could help with communications, put them in charge of sort of managing the local operations, and in time this grew. This gentleman had a son that was actually at the time going to high school. He was a long way away, so he wasn't back and forth to the village where this opportunity was taking place. And as the mine progressed and as things started getting bigger and better, the government started stepping up, and a sealed road came in and electricity came in, and the progression of this young man had now been, he was through high school, his dad now earning a decent salary was able to put him through university, and by the time he finished his qualification, which was in IT, he actually came back to the company and now heads up their company as an IT manager. The point about the road and the point about the electricity and the point about the upliftment in the community is that the change that took place just by a road and electricity is all of a sudden you have restaurants, bars, you have hubs that develop along this road within this community, and it changed and will change and has forever changed that little region into something quite spectacular. There isn't another industry that has the same catalytic effect that mining has. Pound for pound, it punches way above its weight. It has the ability to deliver extremely wide-ranging benefits. It has the ability to create and sustain long-term industries. And it needs to be treated as a good tool to help industrialize what needs to be done on that continent for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Mining is not going away. The demand for not only critical minerals, but many others are far beyond anything we have available currently. And so I guess the gist of everything I'm saying is that there's a huge opportunity, and many of the companies are leveraging it. We would like to see many, many more. If you need help, reach out to myself or Sarah. Talk to Atlantic Lithium, who are here in the room. Ask them how their journey's been going. And sometimes it's not always smooth, right? We know this. Thank you for your time. If you want to hear more about what AAMEG does and how we could potentially assist you in a particular region or connect you with a particular individual or particular group, by all means reach out. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you.